Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's session on our Go Digital Western Cape webinar series. My name is Robert Davids, and I'm with the Digital Economy Unit in the Department of Economic Development and Tourism, and I wish to heartily and warmly welcome you to our session today, and thank you for taking the time to join us. I'll be your host for the afternoon, but we have a very exciting lineup for you. As you know, today our topic is e-commerce, and we'll be taking you through some very interesting discussions and insights from leading experts in the industry. Firstly, I'd also like to announce that we have the pleasure of having Minister David Maynier join us here today to open this webinar. So thank you and welcome, Minister, to our webinar. It's really good to have you on board. Then secondly, we have two very esteemed guests. Firstly, Andrew Smith, who is the CEO and co-founder of Yuppiechef. Thank you, Andrew, for your time and interest and for what you'll share here with us today. And then secondly, we also have Frederik Zietsman, who is the head of retail and marketplace at takealot.com. So as you can hear and see, we have a very exciting lineup, and we look forward to spending the next hour with you. So I'll be handing over to Tim Paul shortly, who is the Chief Director in the Department of Economic Development and Tourism. But before that, as host, and with your indulgence, I would just like to take you through a few short matters regarding housekeeping. And if you can all look at your screen, that's our program. And a last note I would like to add to the program is that we are going to have a moderated question and answer session at the end of the program. So I'll explain how that works in a second, but just moving on to some very general housekeeping rules. I would ask you to please note the following. This webinar is being recorded, and just for the sake of keeping background noise to a minimum and to allow the presenters to do their thing in the correct way, we kindly request you to mute all your devices and also to keep your videos off. That, of course, doesn't apply to the presenters. During the presentation, if you have any questions, we ask you to post those questions in the chat window on the right-hand side of the team screen. And then furthermore, as I said, at the end of the two presentations, we will have a moderated question and answer session, which Mr. Tim Paul will oversee. The last thing I would like to share is that if we do screen shares during the presentation, then there may be a 5 to 10 second delay due to bandwidth constraints, but please be patient. The system works very well and everything should run smoothly. So from my side as host, thank you very much for your interest, for your participation and for your cooperation, and we look forward to spending the next hour with you. So at this stage, I would like to hand over to Tim Paul. As I said before, he's the Chief Director in the Department of Economic Development and Tourism, and Tim will do the introductions to Minister Maynier and to Andrew Smith and Frederik Zietsman. Thank you, Tim. Over to you.
Thank you, Robert. Great pleasure to have you all here. Today is the second in our series, our Go Digital. It's actually going to be called GoDigitalWC for Western Cape series. Last week, we tackled the subject of Jump, which is our Jump for Entrepreneurs, which is our app. And you can find that on the Android the Play Store and the App Store. There will be a recording of that made available shortly. We're just in the final stages of editing that. Anyway, I really don't want to take too much of your time. Thanks again to our special guest today, Fred Zietsman, who's the head of retail and marketplace with takealot.com, and Andrew Smith, who's the CEO and founder of Yuppiechef. Both of those are household brands. Our objective today is to explain largely to SMMEs the benefits of e-commerce and how you can participate in this. And I'm now going to hand over to the Minister of Economic Opportunities, Mr. David Maynier, to just give us some opening words. Minister has said that he will join for as long as he can, but there may be pressing commitments. He may not be with us for the full session. Minister, if we can turn over to you, please.
Thank you so much, Tim. I really just wanted to say to all the participants in the first instance, welcome to the webinar where, as you said, we're going to be discussing digital technology and e-commerce, which will hopefully assist business to offer more products and services online. And we, of course, are very aware that COVID has had a massive effect on the economy and on business. And for that reason, the department and the entities are, of course, working round the clock to ensure that, on the one hand, we open more businesses, but that we do it safely on the other hand in the Western Cape. And so, I mean, we are certainly, as a department, working on making submissions to amend regulations or to issue directives which would have the effect of opening more businesses in the Western Cape. But at the same time, yesterday we also issued a set of health guidelines for business, which we hope will assist business implement protocols to safeguard employees and to prevent the spread of the virus in the Western Cape. I think the Go Digital Western Cape initiative is a fantastic initiative on the part of the department to support business. And I really want to thank Tim Paul and the digital economy team for pulling it together. And I also want to thank Andrew Smith and Frederik Zietsman for taking time out of their busy schedules to join us this afternoon. So I really hope that you enjoy the webinar, and I apologize if I will not be able to join you for the entire session, but I'm certainly going to stay as long as I can. So enjoy.
Minister, thank you very much for those words, and especially the kind words. I'm going to ask a special favor just for folks. Well, let's try something. Can we have a quick session to turn on our cameras? Hopefully we don't break the internet. Would folks like to just give us, indulge us for a minute and turn on cameras? Let's get a view with some, let's see some real people out there. In COVID-19, we miss real contact with real people. Okay, so let's turn on the cameras. Ready, steady, go. 3, 2, 1. And any more? I get a few more. Okay, I'm trying to still get a picture of that. Okay. All right, folks. So thank you again. Okay, there's more cameras coming on. Cedric, looking comfortable there. Nice to see you. Anybody else? There we go. Thank you very much. Okay, folks, I'm going to hand over now. Andrew, you're our first presenter. We look forward to hearing from Andrew. I believe Andrew is going to talk and is not going to present any slides. So Robert, you'll just put up the image, just the placeholder image and the CV. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Robert. Mr. Maynier, good to be here on this session. My time is very short, and the introduction was at least the scope of this talk was about how I'm going to tell you everything about getting a business online and payment and logistics and the whole story. Obviously, that's not really possible in the few minutes that I have, but I'm going to try and touch on a few things and just tell a little bit about our story. I am one of the co-founders of Yuppiechef. It was started in my lounge in Plumstead 14 years ago. It was a side hustle while we were building websites and doing marketing for other companies, and we wanted to get something going ourselves. We wanted to stop selling our time and try and sell some sort of product online so that we could wake up on a Monday morning and check the bank account and see all the money that had flooded in while we were at the beach over the weekend. That was certainly the dream. The dream took a very long time to get anywhere near that. It was actually 5 years before Yuppiechef was paying our salaries. For the first 5 years, we still had to do other work for other clients, and slowly, Yuppiechef built to what it is today, where it's a company. We've got 150 staff, we've got 7 physical stores. We've won the South African eCommerce Award 6 times, but not as an overnight success, as a very long journey. And I wanted to just start by saying that these last 6 weeks have probably been some of the scariest, hardest weeks in business. It felt at times like that 14-year journey could all be over in just like that, in a totally unpredictable event that happened. And I'm not here to talk about the frustrations or the politics of lockdown, but I do want to say that I'm learning to be both scared and optimistic at the same time. You know, both grateful for what I do have and frustrated by what I don't have. And I'm kind of giving myself permission that my emotions don't have to be binary. I don't have to be all positive or all negative, that it's okay to feel both. And so if what I say today is optimistic and about taking opportunities and going for it, it's not because I'm also not feeling all those other things as well. I can certainly empathize if that's where you're at in your journey. Firstly, I want to say that I think that COVID-19 is accelerating existing trends rather than changing the world into something brand new. You know, if you think of something like this Microsoft Teams that we're on now, or the company Zoom, it was already going. There were already technologies or ways of working that were happening, but Zoom has had an absolutely turbocharged year. It's one of the best stocks in the world. If you bought it in January, you'd be a lot richer than you are today. But it was already a company that worked, that was good technology, that was happening. And many of the companies and industries that are booming now were already on the up before COVID-19. And many of those that are hurting now were already on the way down. Not all of them, obviously, there are exceptions. But you know, this has really accelerated the trends that were already happening. In retail, which is obviously my industry, malls were already struggling all over the world, but particularly in South Africa. We've got a glut of malls with too much of average retail, too much of people not offering anything differentiated or anything special. And they were already starting to lose relevance. And this has now accelerated those trends. So the crisis has accelerated the need for retailers to have some sort of online offering and to sort of get out of where they were at before. The need for all companies, in fact, is we have to have a digital offering. We have to have some sort of channel that is not just in the physical. That was already there. That was there in 2018 and 2019, but even more so this year. So the first point I wanted to just make is not to necessarily think about your own business or your own situation as being, now I have to think about something brand new, but rather to look at where you're at and think, how is what I'm doing being accelerated? How are the trends or the changes in my industry being rapidly accelerated because of what's happened in 2020? Secondly, I think linked to this, but one of the overall trends this year is towards the word that I've seen is home-centric. So home-centric activities. If you think about the home fitness industry, was nowhere a couple of months ago, and now everyone is trying to offer some sort of home fitness, whether it's a Facebook page with exercise classes or the home fitness equipment. Schooling from home has really accelerated this year. Traditional schools are having to embrace it, but also schools that were already in some sort of digital way. And then webinars like this, the whole eventing industry has shifted towards home-centric. Restaurants are gearing up for home delivery. And regardless of how long the current lockdown lasts or how long even the virus lasts, we are forming habits now that are not going to quickly go away. They're going to still exist in months or probably years' time. And so I think you got to think about your own industry and say, what part of what I do can become home-centric? And sometimes it's really obvious. I was talking to, I've got a friend who knows someone who does classes teaching people how to bake biscuits and decorate biscuits. And just overnight, she decided that she was going to start selling these online and charges for 7 people to join on a Zoom call, and she teaches how to bake biscuits. And that's something which is taking an existing business but shifting it into a home-centric way. As Yuppiechef, we're very fortunate that our products are already very geared towards activities at home. Cooking and baking and making food and is already there. But we're trying to double down on certain things like pizza making, for example. If people love pizza and people used to eat pizza out a lot, and that's going to shift, how do we kind of really tell people you can make really good quality pizza at home and kind of shift into that category even more so. So the second one is thinking about your industry and your business and what about it can be home-centric. The third thing I'm going to say is that it's a really good time to experiment. Customers are incredibly stressed and they have lots of time to complain. And so we have, as our business, we have tried to operate throughout the whole lockdown in various levels. And throughout that time, we have had, it's been a brutal month for our customer support team. If your Mother's Day gift that you ordered in Yuppiechef doesn't arrive by Sunday, my apologies in advance. It's been really difficult to run a business, but also customers have been stressed out and they've taken out all the other frustration on companies like ourselves. But that being said, put that aside for a moment. Customers are also being forced to try new things. And most of them understand if the company that they are interacting with are learning and working it out together. Customers have never bought groceries online, have bought them online for the first time in these last few weeks, because they believe the alternative to buying groceries online, was going out into public and catching a deadly disease. So that was their motivation for experimenting with home, with online grocery sales. And they're kind of okay if the retailers that they're interacting with are not getting it perfect, because they understand this is an unprecedented time, and if my bananas don't arrive perfect, that's okay. At least I got something at home. And so the opportunity that exists at the moment is to try new things. And to force yourself, your own company, into trying new things, knowing that customers are open to that. We've never delivered fresh food before. And in the space of a weekend, we turned on the delivery of fresh food boxes in the Cape Town area. And we did that by hooking up with the restaurant supply chain. So obviously, as lockdown happened, all restaurants are closed, and the entire restaurant supply chain is set up to deliver to restaurants. They've got the cold chain, they've got the trucks, and now they've got nowhere to send their goods. And so we turned that on, and it was not perfect. Normally Yuppiechef is an incredibly, I'd say, we would like to get things perfect every time. And so if something is not perfect, we'd rather not do it than do it in an average way. But we did it. We turned it on, and it's been a relative success. And so one of the interesting opportunities that exists at a time like this is that you've got customers who are desperate for some new product, and you've then got a supply chain that is not perfectly balanced. There's been a worldwide shortage of yeast at the moment. And I don't think that's necessarily because all of a sudden the world is using more yeast than they've ever used before. I just think that it's going in different places. If you think about how much yeast the pizza business used to use in the last month, but now they can't use that, but they'd probably buy it in kg bags, not in little 50-gram bags that are at the supermarket. And that whole industry can't shift overnight. And so there's been a disruption in the balance of the supply chain. And I think that digital businesses have a real opportunity to try and jump into that void and take where there's some supply on one part of the industry which doesn't know how to get to market, and then find customers on the other side that are needing goods, but they don't necessarily have access to them. And digital can fill that gap because it is easy and it is possible to get something online really quickly, certainly much quicker than it would be to fit out an entire retail space or some other sort of physical industry to get into. We've been doing e-commerce for a long time, and we have a dedicated tech team and a warehouse and all of that. But my encouragement is that everyone can just start. Looking for home-centric products and services, looking for areas in the supply chain that perhaps been disrupted or out of balance at the moment, and find a way of connecting those two things together. And my encouragement is to start and not to see e-commerce and not to see digital business as this immensely complicated thing that's going to take a very long time to go. So my advice about how to get set up online is to get a price list and email it out to a few people, or put it on a WhatsApp group, or put it on a Facebook page, and say that you're accepting orders. And when an order comes in via EFT or SnapScan or Zapper or whatever it is, find a way of having it delivered to the customer. And that is e-commerce. And I don't think we must think about e-commerce as being this thing that you need to hire a whole lot of techies to do. We've got kitchen stores, and we're speaking to some other kitchen retailers whose doors have been closed for the last few weeks. And we said, do you have the email addresses of your customers? And they said, yes, we do. We said, well, why don't you just email those customers and let them know that you can take orders and you're able to deliver certain goods at this time. And that's e-commerce, and you're doing it. And then over time, once you start, you can get more and more complicated and fancier than that as it comes. The story of Yuppiechef, certainly starting in 2006, was not that we had from the get-go these incredible systems and facilities and logistics. We started with basically that, a website that could take some orders. And the first order came in, and we figured out how to put it in a box and how to ship it off. And then all of a sudden, there were two orders that had come in at the same time. And so I printed out the order slips, and I put one on that table and one on that table. And then as the stock came in for the one order, I put it on that piece of paper. And as it came in from that order, I put it on that piece of paper. And when all the items were there, then we put it in the box and shipped it out. The important thing is to start. I think Frederik's going to talk about Takealot now as being a platform. There are many platforms that do exist to get you going, but there's also WooCommerce and Shopify and various other sites that can get you up and running really quickly. I'm here to perhaps just encourage or be a voice of optimism that says that we have a real opportunity to connect with customers in a digital way, and that that customers don't demand perfection in this time. They have the time, they're willing to jump through hoops, they're willing to figure it out and forgive you, and the important thing is just to start. That's it from me.
Thank you very much for that. That was very, very informative. I'm really fascinated with some of those things. And the thing that I must really thank you for, if nothing else, is Mother's Day on Sunday. Right, I've got some hasty planning to do. Right, and I'm sure that there'll be a whole lot of other people. We're going to hold our questions over until the next session. Andrew, I know you said your time is limited, but you're able to stay with us for the balance of the hour. So without any further ado, we're going to hand over to Frederik, who is the head of retail and marketplace at Takealot. There you go. You can see that. Frederik, we look forward to hearing from you. And Frederik is going to present a handful of slides as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Yeah, such a privilege to be here and to see all the faces that's joining us today. Andrew, I am so comforted by the fact that you also went through these rough 6 weeks. To be honest, it's been ups and downs, and it's been a bit of a challenge to adapt to this new normal. However, I do share the fact that there's lots of opportunities. Our businesses has been required actually to innovate very quickly, and I think to the point of acceleration, definitely. Takealot.com wasn't known as a non-perishables grocery business, not ambient groceries, but in a question of a few weeks, we managed to pivot our categories quite quickly. So I think innovation is one good thing that came from this COVID challenges that we're facing at the moment. I'm just going to share a few slides in terms of the agenda for today. Can everybody see my slides? Okay, so I'm going to.
Thank you. Okay.
I'm going to get going. So, Tim, just to thank you for your comment when we started is, yes, Takealot.com and Yuppiechef is both household names. I'm just going to give you a brief intro into who Takealot is, what we do, brief overview of the e-commerce market. I did see some comments coming through on the chat already in terms of e-commerce being seen as elite. Hopefully we can change that. I'll share some insights as around what Takealot Marketplace is and what opportunities we do offer for SMMEs, and then just briefly touch on some trends that we're seeing currently during COVID, opportunities we're seeing, as well as some trends beyond the COVID era. So firstly, just Takealot.com established about 9 to 10 years ago, depending on who you ask. Our heart of our business is around customer centrism. We believe that the customer is the most important person in our business. We try to serve them to the best of our ability. Something people might not know about Takealot, if you look at our platform at the moment, we do offer our first party business, which is a traditional retail business, very similar to Andrew's business, where we buy stock, hold stock, sell stock. But then we've got a sizable third party marketplace where third party businesses like yourselves, small businesses, even established brands, list their product, sell their product, use our fulfillment channels and our customer services. We run through iOS, Android, Mobi and desktop, so very accessible in terms of all customer demographics. We've got a very wide organic and paid audience. Our app is constantly in the top 2 apps on the App Store and Google Play Store. In terms of our own communication channels, remember everything I'm telling you now, it's not a Takealot sales pitch, it's in the context of SMEs getting access to these customers. We have a fairly sizable email base as well as a lot of social media followers. In terms of our website visits, again, in the spirit of SMMEs, this is for you guys as well. Our website traffic is among the highest in the country and also growing the fastest. 34% year-on-year growth in visits to the site off a fairly high base. That's around 135 million visits a year last year. In terms of our average daily users in our apps, sitting at around 110,000. So as you can see, a very sizable audience for SMMEs to reach through our platform. we over-index of the retail category, especially if you compare out to our peers that offer similar platforms. We've got 2 distribution centers, both Cape Town and Johannesburg. Cape Town one being extended at the moment. As you can see, the groundbreaking happening to the bottom right, extending it to 45,000 square meters. We offer 30 departments. We've got about plus minus 8 million products through these departments, a lot of them through marketplace sellers. The most of our products on our to the marketplace. That's really the value proposition for a marketplace, is to address the long tail of selection that you see in retail, very much similar to the Amazon model. A recent addition to our business, I think Andrew spoke about this, is a more of an omni-channel approach that we offer click and collect for our customers. We've seen a lot of success, especially in some product categories where the unit economics didn't make sense for delivery. In terms of our flagship pickup point, the one in Johannesburg, it's the busiest highway in Africa. When we speak to our seller base and to our merchant base, they're very excited about this because it makes their products very accessible, whether they're selling tea or socks, or whether they're selling cookware like La Crusade. Very excited to understand that their products reach the customers through a physical touch point as well. We have our own delivery fleet of 75 plus delivery vehicles. I think at the time like COVID, our contactless delivery and our last mile fulfillment really offer good value for the consumer, but I'll elaborate on that a bit more later. In terms of our pickup points, very well distributed nationally. So again, I just want to reiterate what I'm saying is in the context of SSMEs, you now have access through our platform to the whole country. There's no part of the country that we don't deliver to, which means your audience can exponentiate in terms of what the capability of scale is for your business. In terms of the market overview and benefits for SMMEs that we see, like yourselves, if you look at the retail industry in South Africa at the moment, these are all Euromonitor numbers. They might have been affected by COVID, so just excuse it if it's not completely accurate. But we expect the retail industry in FY22 1.2 billion rand, of which about 60% is non-food, which means those categories Takealot.com can offer value for you. So if your business is a non-food business, we do offer a very accessible value offer for you. In terms of growth, we expect that to be at 7.6. That'll obviously now slow down dramatically since COVID has hit. In some categories, that's not tradable at the moment. If we look at the e-commerce market, again, a Euromonitor stat, about 19 billion rand last year. If you look at this in terms of penetration, e-commerce is still in its infancy in South Africa. Our penetration sits at about 1.3, 1.4%, depending on what categories you include and exclude. But if you look at international benchmarks, especially comparing to India and Brazil, e-commerce is only in its infancy in South Africa. If you look in Brazil, sitting closer to the 8-9%, compared to China, sitting at just below 30%. It's clear and for everyone to see that there's massive opportunity for e-commerce in South Africa. Our physical infrastructure supports this with decreasing data costs and various payment method innovations that's happening at the moment. I think this is really this is an understatement. We can definitely get to India and Brazil, even some of the European countries like the UK sitting at 20%. So in terms of Takealot Marketplace, what Takealot Marketplace offers is it offers sellers, which we refer to, small businesses, brands, anyone to list their products, to sell on our platform. If I can just maybe speak to some of the width of the spectrum that we see, we've got people in Soweto on our platform generating enough revenue to feed their families and build homes. We've got medium-sized established bricks and mortar retailers like Tafelberg Furnitures or Binnens online, which is also, I think, a pure player. They're selling on our platform, up to the more sizable businesses like the French DIY, hardware store, Leroy Merlin, that recently entered the country. We've got like Crusade, Bose, Reader's Warehouse, some more established businesses. So just to point to the fact that our platform does not offer solutions only to big and medium enterprises, but it offers solutions to micro enterprises. So the question is, why would you invest in Takealot Marketplace? Without sounding too salesy, the reality is we aggregate demand. We've got millions of people visiting our site at the moment. Your product is discoverable and viewable and buyable on our site. Customers trust Takealot.com. We've been highly rated in consumer trust surveys over the last 2 years. We've got a very established development in multi-channel, so we serve customers through mobile, app, and desktop. And then I think just in terms of data capability, we've got quite a deep knowledge and understanding of data, and we've got a fairly sizable machine learning team that makes sure that the site is optimized. So all of this is to the benefit of the marketplace sellers as well. In terms of how it works, it's very simple. There's a sellontaclot.com call to action on the top left-hand side of our homepage of our desktop site. You click there, you submit your application, and then we go through an approval process, which is really just making sure you're not trying to sell second-hand goods on our site or any unprohibited items. You go through registration, onboarding, and then you get going and selling. In terms of what we charge, there's a subscription fee. We take some commission. The commission includes the payment gateway fees that we need to cover, and then fulfillment fees. I think this is maybe worth pausing on for a second or two. Takealot.com's delivery network stretches the whole country. I think we're the largest last mile delivery courier business in the country. So in terms of scale, we offer very competitive fulfillment fees for these sellers or merchants. Nowhere in it's very low. In terms of storage fees, that's just we give access to our DC so that the small businesses that don't have the operational capacity to actually pick, pack, and ship orders, that they can place the items within our DCs, and we do the pick, pack, and shipping for them. In terms of worldwide trends during this COVID pandemic, Ipsos did a recent multi-country poll. They interviewed, I think, about 10,000 adults between 24 and 65. And if you look at it per region, the question was asked, what about each of the following? Would you say you're doing each more frequently or less frequently compared to the month ago? So you can clearly see in countries like India, China, and Vietnam, people are much more frequently buying products online using digital and e-commerce channels. Interesting call out as well is if you look at Italy, 31% of people stating that they use e-commerce more frequently. This we believe is and will also be the case in South Africa. If we look at a current Nielsen survey that was done on the 9th of April this year, 68% of South Africans reduced their frequency to visiting supermarkets. Now, there's a lot of factors contributing to that. Mainly, a lot of shops are closed, but the interesting fact is that 37% increase their shopping online. We believe that this is not just a short-term trend to Andrew's point. Existing businesses and technologies are being accelerated at the moment. We believe this is going to accelerate the penetration of e-commerce into the retail market in South Africa. In terms of potential opportunity within COVID, there's a business, they run quite handy and neat technology. What they do is they simulate website traffic throughout the globe. And if you look at their aggregate stats, which is represented by the green line in the graph to the left, you look at the cases per 1,000 people, how COVID pandemic spread throughout these countries, what happened to e-commerce traffic, and you can see the green line accelerating very quick as people and consumers' behaviors have changed. Very much over-indexing in the United States, merely because of their physical distribution infrastructure, as well as their penetration into some of the more homeware and hard lines that all the other countries doesn't have. In terms of post-COVID, the graph to the right, if you look at Italy and the similar web data that what it shows for Italy, you can clearly see across Amazon, eBay, AliExpress, the growth in the last 7 days ending the 25th of April versus January. You can see the dark blue graph or bar chart rather accelerating as people start going back to work, start earning income again, and start continuing with their livelihoods. E-commerce is definitely a channel for them that they are exploring continuously and increasingly so. In terms of what this means for e-commerce in the COVID era and beyond. So in terms of opportunities at the moment, I have to say that from a social distancing perspective, we are convinced and fully believe that e-commerce supported by excellent execution of contactless delivery promotes social distancing and will, while stimulating the economy, whilst generating jobs, whilst generating and tax for the state fiscus. So in terms of opportunities at the moment, there's a massive opportunity for e-commerce to expand at the moment, and we do understand regulations and we respect them, but we are very, very excited about the potential of unfettered e-commerce. In terms of trust, I think Andrew spoke to about this earlier as well. We really believe that at the moment there's a migration of people into the digital space, these digital immigrants that previously have not or have not even considered e-commerce as a way of life. We need to treat them very well. We need to execute our promises. And this is very much the heart of takealot.com. We believe there's opportunity at the moment for us, but also for small businesses like yourself to win consumers into the digital space through executing operationally by doing what you said you're going to do. Our promises, that's at the heart of what we do at Takealot. In terms of demand, Andrew can testify to this as well. Massive demand in some intuitive categories like laptops, home office equipment, health. I mean, the healthcare category from nutritional supplements up to masks and all your PPE equipment has gone through the roof. However, we also see in our search data very interesting latent demand for a very, very wide list of product categories, some not so intuitive. Andrew mentioned the home fitness, the amount of people that are looking for dumbbells and kettlebells and yoga mats it's unfathomable at the moment. So we believe there's really value to be added during the COVID era by increasing potential categories that we can sell into. In terms of opportunities post-COVID, look, I think it goes without saying that there will be job losses through this COVID pandemic, through the economy slowing down, and we believe that there's a massive opportunity to create employment through entrepreneurship, especially through online marketplaces that is very accessible. The barriers to entries are very low. Very little overhead is required. So I think in terms of employment and empowerment, the opportunities definitely speaks to online. In terms of innovation, Andrew also touched on this. If I only look at our own business, the level of innovation that has happened in the last 6 weeks is amazing. It just makes you realize what we can do and what we can achieve. But I think even post-COVID, there will be product categories that we cannot think about at the moment. I like the idea of the lady creating the classes to decorate cupcakes. That's and innovation stretches through services, but also products. So I believe after COVID, it's a massive opportunity for creative people to come up with innovative solutions for problems that consumers face. And again, e-commerce as a low barrier to entry channel actually gives the entrepreneur the opportunity to exploit these opportunities. In terms of acceleration, look, I mentioned the Ipsos poll and I mentioned Nielsen's preliminary insights, but the fact is the consumer behavior shifted. I think e-commerce is set to accelerate post-COVID, maybe pulling forward our penetration by 2 or 3 years. I think the consumer will itself become more demanding over time as e-commerce becomes a staple. And for the supply chain, we believe that the whole power dynamic will shift in terms of how supply chains operate, which will mainly be driven more demanding and expecting service levels and product ranges to be found online that they currently don't have at the moment. So both opportunities during COVID-19, but also opportunities post-COVID-19. So in all, I think, just to echo Andrew's positiveness, I think there's excitement around e-commerce, there's excitement about digital. I feel for the guys in Travelstart and in the services industries like Airbnb. Obviously, they will take some time, but for us that works in more of a physical product environment, massive opportunity. And I invite you to try out Takealot Marketplace. Whoever you are, whatever the size of your business is, let's see if we can help.
Frederik, thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Per our program, the next session is going to be a sort of a moderated discussion. I'm going to just ask a few questions for a little while, and then we're going to just, in the meantime, the team are addressing some of the comments that are on the appearing in the sidebar. Just to answer one general comment is yes, as we said, this will be recorded, and the recording will be available. Frederik, I think it's actually your microphone is adding a fair bit of background noise. If you could just mute yours temporarily. Let's see, I think that's better. And then if you can just take it off. So a few of the questions that I had, 1 second, let me just get up here. And you've answered a lot of the draft ones that I put together. I know that I've seen some figures of some massive uptake in Italy and China and various other countries before lockdown. And thank you for sharing your figures with us. I've heard a comment that if we look back in history, in 2003, there was the SARS epidemic. And that is actually coincident with the rise of Alibaba and JD.com. I know there's the expression, never waste a good crisis. So between Andrew and Frederik, do you think this could be the turning point for e-commerce in South Africa?
Yeah, maybe I'll give you my 1 minute response. I believe it'll accelerate e-commerce, but I do believe that we sit with infrastructure issues, the accessibility of data, the product categories and ranges that are sold online at the moment doesn't maybe address a wider demographic. So I think, yes, the consumer behavior has shifted, but we need to still address all the infrastructure issues and the other barriers to entry like data and potentially payment methods as cash on delivery or Zapper or SnapScan or these innovative payment channels is not always available on all e-commerce sites.
And Andrew, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think your question is fairly open-ended when you say a turning point. You know, as Frederik said, 1.3% of retail in South Africa is online. You know, if that doubled, it's still only 2.6%, but doubling would be huge. The infrastructure for retailers, both physical retailers starting to sell online and obviously pure play online retailers, it would be huge for them to double their capacity, and that still only gets us to 2.6%. But I think you absolutely are seeing a change in behavior. You know, anecdotally, my mom bought groceries for the first time online. She would never have done that before, but now that she's done it and it worked okay, she said, well, maybe I'll keep on doing that. So I think you're seeing people who are being forced into it during this time, and then they get over that hurdle and they figure out how maybe their credit card works or how other payment type of methods work, and then they're more likely to keep on going.
Thank you for that. A question has actually come up in the sidebar. This is one that I had written down about how do you see e-commerce growing in Africa, and which parts of Africa is it growing in? Where do we stand as South African companies or South African exporters effectively in this? Andrew or Frederik, whoever would like to have to go first.
We have over the last couple of years made Yuppiechef available outside of South Africa. For e-commerce purchases, but in SADC initially, so Namibia, Botswana were probably the two biggest markets for ours, and they are small markets compared to South Africa. You know, so if South Africa e-commerce penetration is small, the actual economy is really big. One of the pieces of advice I think that we took a long time ago was to not see. To kind of think of Africa more as cities than as countries. You know, South Africa is a relatively connected, you can have an e-commerce company in Cape Town delivering to basically anywhere in the country, but there's a lot of African countries that have a lot of potential, but it's quite difficult to, the infrastructure is not necessarily as advanced. So I think potentially to see individual cities and the opportunities that exist to kind of tackle an individual city, and not to see obviously Africa as one big place, but not even to see individual countries as one big place, but really to have localized solutions. I think there is some potential. I think it's quite difficult for South Africans, even though Frederik's talking about our lack of infrastructure, I think we take for granted how advanced a lot of our infrastructure really is here. And you've got to have some local on-the-ground knowledge in order to expand outside our borders.
My bad. Frederik, any response from you?
Look, I think the numbers speak for themselves. Look at the 1.3%. The opportunity, I'm maybe talking from a Takealot perspective, to expand across the borders of South Africa would just be spreading our capital too thin, given that the local opportunity is so big. But I think the one thing that we are seeing is that African countries in themselves are very innovative and very creative in producing merchandise and product that the South African consumer are interested in. So in terms of exporting or importing product from the rest of Africa and selling it to the local citizens of South Africa, which we still believe doesn't have a lot of choice in terms of range and product categories, I think there's maybe a definitive opportunity for us to expand our African merchandise. But I think let's learn from the likes of Jumia. To Andrew's point, Africa is difficult to do business in maybe at the moment. So I think let's execute well in the local market, and then maybe we can expand to different countries.
Thank you for that. So the question that's come up also in the sidebar. Let me put it this way: what are the pinch points in the e-commerce value chain? Where are we constrained in South Africa? What's stopping this from reaching people from Cape Agulhas to Putsonderwater across the demographics, across the geography and across the demographics?
So I mean, the obvious ones that Frederik will probably talk to, it'll be data, it'll be payment, it'll be delivery. But let's put that aside. One of my more controversial answers to that question is that the pinch points is that retailers haven't tried. And because retailers haven't tried, customers haven't got into the mindset that they can use online as a channel. And so our adoption has been slow. I've been making my money selling my income, selling things online for 14 years. And over that time, you just encountered so many people saying nobody shops online, nobody buys anything online. And my answer was often because nobody's trying to sell anything online. And I think only in the last couple of years are we starting to see that shift. And so my perhaps controversial or perhaps trite answer is the pinch points is that nobody's trying to sell online, rather than there being a gap or a lack between, that the customers are experiencing.
Yeah, so if I agree with that, if I can maybe add one additional perspective is, I think people get burnt by buying online. As to my point of opportunity, trust is a major thing. And if the standard of execution in the country is poor, I mean, all the European countries, the States, they were treated and spoiled by Amazon, customer centrism and delivery capability. We need to up the standards of execution in the country across the board. Both big and small e-commerce retailers, peer players needs to up the standard to win the trust of the consumer. Because what we do know is once burned, you don't come back again, or you are less likely to come back. And what we're trying to advocate for is customers buying across the spectrum, from TVs to milk so you're not going to win somebody's trust by not delivering their TV in time, or to your point, Tim, not giving your mother a Mother's Day gift this Sunday. So we need to build trust. I think that's probably the biggest barrier for us.
Thank you very much. In terms of the logistics capability that we have in South Africa, how do we stand with that? Is that a shortcoming? Is that a great area of opportunity for business, for people to fill in the gaps? Do we need many more localized courier services to work with the big nationals and fill in gaps? Any advice on that?
I can make a start with that. Most e-commerce, if you go back a good couple of years, relied on courier companies. And courier companies were traditionally built as business-to-business model. So, they would collect from one business and drop off to another business. And then when e-commerce came along, they kind of adapted their business to be business-to-consumer. So picking up from a retailer and dropping off from the consumer. And that caused a number of constraints. They're pretty much 8 to 5, Monday to Friday. There's always going to be a secretary at the company to pick it up or receive it. And so there's no delivery slots and there's no guarantee what day it's going to arrive. And so that's been the traditional logistics model. But I think you're starting to see shifting to businesses that are really more set up to sort of point-to-point deliveries, after hours, weekends, guaranteed delivery times. And so, Mr. D is one of them, and Uber Eats, you're seeing some of those kind of more, almost, I wouldn't say crowdsourced, but sort of driver-owned type of situations. And so I think that it is evolving rapidly, and we're definitely getting into it's kind of starting to catch up with customers' expectations of, I've ordered this thing, why hasn't it arrived yet? We certainly had a slow start in South Africa, but I do think that that's getting up to speed really quickly.
Yeah, I would have to agree. I think from a walls and wheels perspective, we've got the assets to execute. What we do need is visibility and transparency to dispel the anxiety that sits in the e-commerce delivery. When is it coming? Can I reschedule it? Can I send it to a different address? So I think agility and flexibility is maybe one of the areas where we need to iterate and innovate on. The walls and wheels is there. It's just saying what you promise you're going to do and giving the customer the tech to work with that and to understand where his delivery is at any given moment in time.
What was that expression? Walls and wheels?
Yes.
Okay, I like that. Thanks very much. Again, just on the question of pinch points, the question of data access has come up. In the Western Cape, we have implemented at the moment 633 Wi-Fi hotspots, maybe a bit tricky to use under current lockdown conditions. We are still continuing to expand that. A question that I had in my notes, and it's come up, a question, maybe not zero rating, but reverse billing. Is that something considered? Is that a way of taking cost out for the consumer? I suppose ultimately the cost gets passed back to them, but is that something that you have considered?
I think from our perspective, we have envisioned that, and we've had some explorative analysis done on the fact, but it's very difficult to prove a return on investment and actual that there's no leakage. The intention is to serve the customer and serve the business, and there's not always traceability of what's happening. If there's actually checkout, if there's actually conversion, if there's no value dilution. I think in terms of hurdles, data, if you look at the data consumption from our apps, and we don't believe that's the major hurdle to making e-commerce more ubiquitous. It's maybe a barrier, but maybe not the biggest barrier.
Yeah, I would briefly disagree with that and say I agree with that and say that compared to trying to get Netflix off the ground in South Africa, an actual browser site add to cart checkout on a normal e-commerce site is compared to the value of what you're purchasing. Assuming that you're making a purchase for 100 Rand or a couple of thousand Rand. The data is a very small part of that, and I don't think that is necessarily the thing that is holding us back.
Thank you for that, and we've got about 5 minutes left. We are, and our decision with this website, with this webinar, is we are going to look at some of the comments that are in the sidebar and address those. Our compact with our speakers is that we're not going to open to the floor. I know there have been one or two comments about that. We may consider that in future webinars. So the future of brick and mortar stores. I know, Andrew, that you made some comments on that. There have been some changes. I've heard of some innovation in Australia and other places where people have actually opened brick and mortar stores so people can touch and feel the stuff and then order online. Andrew, you operate brick and mortar and online. You operate in both modes. Any comments on that and how that works?
Well, I have a lot of comments on that that will fit more than 5 minutes. Right now our stores are closed because we're trying to figure out how to go about opening them safely. So I think there's no doubt that in the next couple of months you're going to see a shifting behavior. Whether that is a short-term or long-term, we're going to have to see. We're personally of the opinion that in many categories, physical retail is here to stay. And I say many categories because I think it's quite difficult when we talk about retail. We talk about, jewelry and cars and a loaf of bread and a TV. Those are actually radically different categories that each need to be thought of with their own, their own set of thinking. In our category, the thing that we actually see differences in online and our stores in what works. People come into our stores to browse. They say, I don't know what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a Mother's Day gift. Let me just look and see what that is. And particularly kind of the more decor categories. I just want to look. I want to take in 100 products and then go, oh, that catches my eye. Whereas online traffic is a lot more about, it's like a hunting mode. It's like, I know what I want. I need that new TV, or in our case, that new blender. And I'm going to type in the product code and I'll land on the page and I'll add to cart and checkout. So even within one category, like sort of kitchen and home, you see there's different behaviors and different shopping needs. And so I think that we're big fans of e-commerce and online, obviously. That has been our business. But I think we're not of the opinion that one has to win and one has to die. Like it's e-commerce is a fad and it's going to be over in a few years' time, or stores are all going to be closed in a few years' time. We think there's a world where both work together, but you do need to have them working together, and that's a big focus for us. Is how do both channels work together to make up the entirety of Yuppiechef?
Thank you very much, Frederik.
Yeah, so I have to agree. I think the consumer behavior, just the human nature of shopping, is so entrenched in who we are and what we do. So going to a mall, I don't think it's going to change very soon. I do, however, believe that certain product lines which easily be commoditized, maybe in tech categories or appliances, those makes a very strong case for a deep online penetration where it's a functional product. In categories where you have more of a look and feel, a curated type selection, or specialist product, those definitely have a great appeal for bricks and mortar. But I believe the two are synergistic. I don't think it's either or. I think it's both. From Takealot's perspective, we don't envision going into bricks and mortar very soon. Our challenge is to innovate and to use technologies to simulate the in-store experience online through better product descriptions, better product images, embedded meta content and videos that can win consumer trust. I mean, there's emerging technologies that assist us in that, but I mean, we both play to a different type of innovation. But I think, yeah, both we need both. The one is maybe a bit more scalable than the other, but they complement each other fairly well.
Thank you very much for that. We're just in the sort of final stages, just looking at some of the questions. A few people have been asking about how to get online and so on. Frederik, I know that you mentioned it's very accessible on the Takealot webpage. Andrew, maybe we can get comment from you. But as a general thing, we and the Digital Economy Unit are putting a sort of a practice note together for SMMEs, and in there we're going to list a lot of the e-tailers here, and then who to contact, how to contact them, and get their services online. Good point. This ranges from the Facebook Marketplace, the Gumtrees, the OLX. That's the one end of e-commerce, up to perhaps a more sophisticated end that we've been speaking about today. Just looking through some of the last questions here. Could you just give some final advice, please, for SMMEs who are looking to enter this? This will be the final question from me. But for SMMEs who are looking to enter, how do they? We've mentioned that there are other ways to get into your channels, but what are a few last tips for on the pitfalls that SMMEs look at? What are the negative impacts of trading online?
So when I always tell our story, I say that the very first thing we sold online was to my mom, because when you open an online store, Slightly different if you're on like a Takealot marketplace, but when you open an online store, nobody knows that you exist. And I think the pitfall is often just not giving yourself enough runway. Deciding that, like, I'm going to start selling online and I've only got 1 month's worth of money in the bank. And so this thing needs to be supporting me in a month's time. And so to try, and I know that's obviously really difficult with people's different circumstances, to understand that getting a business up and going online is not an overnight thing. It is going to take a long time and a long investment. And so the pitfall would be to not see it as enough of a long-term game and to rush it. Yeah, the other analogy I have is of a spinach plant. And as one little leaf comes out the ground, you cut it off and eat it because you're starving. And then the next little leaf comes off and you cut it off and eat it. You're going to kill that plant. There has to be a sense of, I need to nurture this thing and I need to not rely on it to feed me until it's actually grown into something a little bit bigger.
Thank you, Andrew. Frederik, final comment. Thank you.
Yeah, so look, my experience the last 2 years in the marketplace side of the Takealot business made me a very firm believer of just starting. Just get going. Don't wait. Don't ask too many questions and take ownership. We've seen sole proprietors, one-man businesses go from, I don't want to speak numbers, but 10x, 20x their business in the first 3 months on Takealot Marketplace by taking ownership, by understanding what you're getting into, not being naive, not being ignorant. To Andrew's point, people need to know about you. So having a strategy, how to look at data, pricing your products, fundamentals of business, get going, understand your landscape, do a bit of research. There's quite a few academies locally that support e-commerce education. I don't want to back any of them, but I think just educate yourself and get going, and don't believe your product. Don't believe that people don't want your product. The customer votes with their wallet. So put it online, give it a go, learn, fail fast, and iterate and innovate around your business. Don't wait for the perfect solution. I think the best lesson is the lesson learned through failure. So I would say and encourage people, give it a go, but also be sober-minded that you are getting yourself into a competitive space and you need to be as good as the guy next to you.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. It's been absolutely brilliant. Thank you for your time. We are just beyond our half past. Thank you for the insights. I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Robert, who's going to give us some concluding remarks. He'll also just let us know about next week's session. So thank you very much from me.
Okay. Thank you very much, Tim. Firstly, to our guest speakers today, to Minister Maynier, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure having you with us. I'm Andrew Smith from Yuppiechef and Frederik Zietsman from Takealot.com. Thank you very much. I think it's been a very insightful and informative presentation. Tim, thanks for moderating a very complex discussion. And to all our participants and listeners, everybody who signed in today, thank you for joining us, for taking the interest, and for just trying to join us all in this common goal of how we navigate this COVID-19 era. I'm aware that we weren't able to answer all the questions that you have put up in the chat window. For those questions that we weren't able to answer, please, we offer our apologies, but as you can see, we only have a very limited time to discuss a very complex topic. So we will do our utmost to give you feedback on those. Just with regards to the way this is going forward, the Go Digital Western Cape webinar series will be a weekly event, and we'll send out communications about when that runs and how that runs. For now, it is on Thursday afternoons at this time. There may be a slight change in the weeks coming, but we'll communicate that to you exactly about what the slots are. I think on the e-commerce topic itself, as you can see, because it's such a complex area, we may look at, as we build a program for the Go Digital Western Cape webinar series, we might build out specific topics within the e-commerce realm and maybe go into a bit more detail on specific topics. But for now, from the Digital Economy Unit and the Department of Economic Development and Tourism, thank you to all our speakers and presenters. Thank you to all the participants. I'm going to put one last slide up. If you want to see how you can get hold of us, the email address is the same as the one on the webinar invitation. So there's a quick snapshot, but you also do have it at hand already. So from our unit and our department, thank you very much. Stay safe, and we'll see you next time. That's us signing out. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Robert. The topic for next week?
The topic for next week. Tim, maybe I'll hand over to you if you'd like to announce that.
So our topic is digital marketing, and we're going to get some, again, excellent speakers from the local community, the local tech community. So there's lots of exciting stuff there. We'll also give you, take some time on next week's webinar to tell you about our technology volunteers program that's going on. There's going to be statements in the media about that very soon if they're not out there already. So yeah, you'll learn more about these Go Digital series, and yes, we're what's the expression? We're building the plane as we're flying it. But welcome to the digital world. So everybody, thank you very much. It's been a great pleasure. We look forward to seeing you this time next week. To our speakers, gentlemen, thank you very much. Adios.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Stay safe.
Thank you. Cheers, then.